Hi everyone, welcome to North and South. This is Tim. Hope you're good. Don't forget, if you like these podcasts, please share, like, subscribe on all platforms. If you know people who would benefit from listening to some of these, some of the well-being ones or whatever, please do share and spread the word. If you can contribute the cost of a cup of coffee once a month, that would be great help to go towards this podcast, making it, and also some of the community stuff we do beyond just these podcasts with vulnerable groups. So you can go to www.northandsoutheducation.cic and you can Google that or use another search engine. I might start putting that in the notes, and there's a contributions page there that you can contribute to if you want to. No problems if you can't, but it does make a big, big difference. And I do appreciate all the people who've contributed in the past. Hope everyone is feeling good. Today I'm going to do the first of a travel series and just see how it goes. And I went to Tunisia in 2006, Easter 2006, and it was the first and I think the only time, I've been to Africa. And when I was there, it was quite an eye-opening experience. And I went with my partner at the time, and I think she said, "Do you want to go to Tunisia? There's a package holiday available." I said, "Yeah." So we went, and when I was there, I met two people who I met up with afterwards a couple of times. And one was a teacher from South Africa who was teaching in a private school in the UK. And the other one was a friend of hers who was from Perth in West Australia. And we kind of buddied up with them over the holiday, which was quite nice, and met up with them afterwards. So it's always nice to meet people on vacation. And also, just want to say, my granddad, who died in 1982, I don't think he ever left the UK. He might have gone to Wales. He might have gone to Stoke-on-Trent. I think that was the furthest he ever went from Liverpool. And travel is very much a luxury, and we often take it for granted. And human beings, for most of our history, we've had to walk everywhere. Maybe ride a horse. And now we've got transport and a different world that allows us to go to lots of different places. Also has its downsides with global warming and planes and all that. But yeah, just something to bear in mind anyway. So when you go to Tunisia, or when I went, you stayed on this big hotel complex and everything was there, all the food you needed. It was all inclusive, not your drinks, but it's all inclusive. And you got water with your meal and coffee and tea and stuff, but you had to buy alcohol yourself if you wanted any, which I didn't really bother with. They were big on peppermint tea as well in Tunisia. And on this hotel complex, you had the pool, lovely hotel rooms, like a little shop, loads of activities for the families, etc., and for different people. And if you walked out the back, like kind of gate of the hotel, you were on the beach, and it was beautiful to see the sea there. It's a very beautiful country, Tunisia, formerly colonized by the French. It's very small, tucked away in northern Africa, and it's got a big peninsula that sticks out, which I'll come to a little bit later. But the second we got there were two strange things. One is the local currency, the Tunisian currency. You couldn't exchange it internationally. You had to buy it when you were there. It was strange. Like you couldn't buy it in advance. You had to buy it in the country, so you had to get some. When we got there, it was quite old-fashioned in that regard. And the first thing that happened when we got there was we were warned about scams because people are very poor. The first thing the woman said when we got on the coach to go to the hotel at the airport was, people will come up to you and go, "Oh, I'm the waiter from your hotel," and come up with a scam even though they don't know who you are. And that was something that you had to be vigilant of when you were in Tunisia, because people were so poor and the economy was so limited and opportunities were so limited. Even though Tunisia is one of the more successful African countries, you could just see how poor people were and how hard they worked for very little. And when you came as a tourist, it was like, these are people who've got money far more than us and can make a big difference in our lives. So that was just something that you had to be aware of. As I was getting there, you remember little things. I was reading Anthony Beevor's book, Berlin, about the Battle for Berlin at the end of World War II, particularly from the Soviets basically took it at the end of World War II and the collapse of the Nazi regime. But it was about all the international politics. And I remember, I was just really happy reading it on the way over there and on the coach and on the vacation itself. It was a book that kind of stuck with me because of how grim it was, but what an important tale of what humans are capable of, negatively as well as to some extent positively, with the peace that came after that, which we call the long peace because it's lasted for a long time. But there was an interesting link there because my granddad actually fought in North Africa, and the Second World War reached this part of the world as well. I remember reading in that book about Churchill and Stalin and Roosevelt, just talking about them as if they were just normal guys, which they were. How important what they decided and what they did meant to the world at the end of World War II. There was so much activity to do in the hotel. It was basically they had football on. I loved playing the football. A lot of the English people took it quite seriously. The hotel seemed to be full of French people, German people, English people. And I can't remember whether there was Spanish or Italians there, but there was quite a range of different people. A lot of French because of I think the colonial thing in the past. And they had shows on, and you could hear all the different languages being spoke in the hotel. And the idea was that you didn't have to leave the hotel if you didn't want to, because when you did leave the hotel, it was quite an interesting place. The taxis were really cheap, so the idea was everyone should get a taxi everywhere. But me and me ex, we went for a few walks, and they were quite interesting, which I'll come to in a minute. One of the things that struck me about the Tunisians is how hard they worked and how poor they were, as I said before. And it really, they say travel broadens the mind. This really opened my eyes to how lucky I was to be born in a developed country and have opportunities which, I've took advantage of, been very lucky. I was just looking at these people thinking, I'm no more skilled or talented than these people, and yet they live very, very tough lives. And that really opened my eyes, this idea of meritocracy, etc. That's all very well, but you need the opportunities and you need people to be able to access those opportunities on an equitable basis. And that really, really struck me and impacted me. And I remember reading John Snow's book, I think it was called Making History, or the journalist, and he used to be the presenter on Channel 4, and he went to Africa, and he said it really opened his eyes to how privileged and lucky he was. And that was certainly something I experienced as well. When we were in the restaurant, the staff it was mainly men who were serving at the tables, and they had to understand so many different languages. And I thought, these guys are smart. These have been trained in different languages. And he went around with a very calm, stoic expression because the boss was giving them loads. You could see the way it was is he was the boss, so he gave it out to them. And you could see the boss, he didn't really seem to care if the guests there saw him being quite ruthless with the staff, because it was about high standards of service for them. And I said to the boss one day, I said, "Can I have a word?" And he came, "Oh, yeah, all this deferential, said, by the way, all your staff here so hard working, you know what I mean? They do really well. So, oh yeah, all this stuff and it was just interesting looking at that kind of hierarchy and how it all works, you know what I mean? And what a load of nonsense A lot of it is. Going to Tunisia was interesting for me as well because I've always been very interested in the Punic Wars between Hannibal, went over the Alps on elephants, and his wars with the Romans in the early days of the Roman Empire before it really expanded around the Mediterranean. And went on a coach trip to Carthage and visited, and all the Roman ruins are there. And there was also some Carthaginian ruins just below. That was just that one area where the Carthaginian ruins were still there. So that was a bit of a pilgrimage because we've always been quite interested in those wars, particularly the Ross Lecky series of books that starts with Carthage and then it has Scipio, I think the second series in the book. No, it's called Hannibal, then Scipio, then Carthage. Three like historical novels which are really good. Again, the brutality of what they did to each other even in those times. But that was interesting. And the guide was very good as well. He was talking about how the Roman propaganda was kind of very anti-Carthaginian after Hannibal had been deposed. And the Romans even tried to destroy all trace of Carthage. There's quite a bit of ethnic cleansing and mass murder involved when the Romans eventually took Carthage, the city, and committed atrocities against the people inside. But just that darkness of human nature, which you get everywhere, really. Very, very interesting. What people stoop to and how they divide themselves. Another interesting thing was when we went on a Sahara trip, a 2-day Sahara trip, again, very cheap, and stayed in this hotel on the one night, I think. It was like full day, night in some hotel in the Sahara Desert, and then another full day was we went up to some of the borders with the other countries around Tunisia because it's very small. It's got like a peninsula that sticks out into the sea, Tunisia, and just north of that was where Carthage was. And just a little, you get to this area, oh yeah, there's the border. There's no difference between either side, these artificial lines, which in the African case was very interesting, the way they divided it almost in straight lines in the 19th century with the race for Africa by the European powers. But on that Sahara trip, went to Luke's home where he lives with his aunt and uncle on Tatooine. A lot of the scenes in the desert with the houses below that are subterranean below the ground are filmed in Tunisia. So we went to that place, which was quite interesting. And that was probably the best part of the trip, I think, the 2-day Sahara thing. So we went there, and in the very early morning, we had to get up at 4 o'clock on the second day. It was pitch black because we wanted to get to this like salt lake or salt desert where the sun came up and you had these like glittering crystals, this huge flat land. Like the sun came up in the distance. It was just absolutely beautiful. We went to Tunisia's largest waterfall, which was very, very small. If you've been to big waterfalls around the world and even seen some in the UK, this was quite small, but the Tunisians seem to be proud of it. But obviously a desert, when you go into a desert, it has limited rainfall throughout the year. I think is it 5 centimeters or less. I can't remember the exact definition, but they have real issues with rainfall, and obviously that impacts on the economy and also the kind of social structure because only certain places are inhabited. So you go like through these huge stretches of Tunisia and not really see much going on. And when we got into the desert, I think we might have gone across the border into other countries. Can't really recall now because it was over 18 years ago. There was huge swathes of just like unoccupied land, etc. But it was beautiful. The salt lakes or the salt deserts, I forget the exact terminology that they used as well. One of the interesting things is you were meant to get a taxi anywhere near the hotel complex. So we walked down this road. It was just beautiful, wide boulevard. I think it was from the French colonial era. So walking down the street and taxis are going past and taxis stopping me. Do you want to come with us? Like, was only like £2, I think, to go from one place to the other. £2. And we were like, oh no, we'll walk. Anyway, walking down the street, and it was me and my partner. And next thing, the bushes in front of us cleared, and this guy came out holding a big axe. And I laugh about it now, but I wasn't laughing about it at the time. And I just thought, why's that guy got an axe? Why's he just come out the bushes near to us? So I said to my partner, stay behind me. And we kind of like angled out to go past him. And we're like looking at him thinking, is he going to run at us with this axe? And next thing, this van pulled up and he got in. He was going to work, but he was like literally holding this huge axe in his hand. So strange. So they walk a bit further down the road, and it was really hot in the daytime. And we were kind of regretting walking now, but we thought we'll do it anyway. And there was these bushes down the side of this huge, beautiful boulevard road. And these two eyes were staring up at me from under these bushes. It was like, again, bear in mind the axe guy's just been just happened a minute or two before, and there's a fella lying down flat under the bush looking up at me. So I looked at him and then quickly realised he had like some shears and he was cutting the bushes from beneath because of the sun. So there was an area, a bit of a space underneath the bush for a human to lie flat. And these two guys were under there, like moving the like tarpaulin or whatever they were lying on up a bit, and then cutting more to stay out of the sun. And these two things happened in quick succession. And again, you're thinking like, did I just experience those things? So eventually we get to the shop at the bottom, went in to buy something, and there was like two fellas having a big heated argument outside. And again, it might have just been like, it happens anywhere, but we were just like, we're in a foreign country here, our feelings of being scared were high. So we just said, right, let's get a taxi home. We're not walking back down this road. But it just goes to show when you're out your own area, etc., and something happens that you don't quite understand with local culture, you can really misinterpret it and take it the wrong way. On the Sahara trip as well, there was a guy who like climbed a tree, one of these people who climbs up to get fruit or something, and he did it in front of us. And obviously they're highly trained, and this guy went up like a monkey climbing this tree. Never seen anything like it. And again, that's what you'll have to do in that locality to survive, and did it for a large part of his life, but it was like a superhuman feat. We were like leaving little tips watching the guy as well. And one of the things about Tunisia is leaving a tip for people made a huge difference. Even if you thought it weren't much, it made a huge difference to those people, and they were very grateful. We went on a camel ride, which is quite interesting because as the camel stands up, it's almost like you go completely horizontal to the ground, but you hold on to that thing, there's like a firm piece of leather, like a handle almost, that you hold on to. The camel sting, but that was a very interesting experience riding the camel with the guide. So we gave him, me and my partner, the equivalent of 20 English pounds, and he was elated. But we went to this like place where you could see the sand dunes just disappearing off into the distance, like almost to infinity. And like we've all seen sand dunes in England if you ever go to a beach or whatever, but to just see so many going off into the distance, it's like something from a film or, just a really profound thing to see, to give the scale of it. Because most of the Sahara, or certainly what we encountered, wasn't what you call sand. It was just like land with poor quality soil, as opposed to sand or anything else like that. We also, this guy came over and said, do you want to ride my horse? And we jumped on, and then he wanted like 10 like Tunisian whatever, I forget what the currency was, which again wasn't that expensive, so we just gave him it. But he'd give people a ride and then he'd ask for it, and then he'd change, and it was just a way of them getting a little bit of local money that cost the English and the Europeans like £3 or whatever. But that was like a little bit of a scam. So you have to be careful because if you went past a shop in Tunisia, the shop owner would literally come out, put their arm around you and get you in, because they were desperate for you to spend money in their shop. And it got a little bit too much at times as well. And I went to this huge Roman amphitheatre called, at a place called El Jam. And again, the locals were like coming up to you and trying to get you into the shops and putting things on your head. And at one time, I pushed this kid away, like, get off me, you know what I mean? And they were just desperate for your money. But you go to El Jam, and the Romans built this huge Colosseum thing 2,000 years ago, and it was the biggest thing around. It was like, ever since, what the Romans could do hasn't been matched since. You know what I mean? You went to some of the Tunisian towns, and obviously they were nice, but this El Jam was in the middle of nowhere. It was like a small little town around it. And the biggest achievement of that town was what the Romans had built 2,000 years ago. But very eye-opening and interesting. I remember coming back on the second day after we'd been to the Salt Lake thing, and I've noticed this in other countries where people don't always have chairs. You know, they sit with that little crouch where, like, you balance on your feet and lean back and the crouch down. It was like, went through this little village, and there was this guy just standing out in the sun, covered head to toe, and they cover the bodies with those loose sheets and outfits to keep cool and protect themselves from the sun and the sand or whatever. Just standing, you're just sitting there, sorry, in the street at like 5 a.m. You know, you wake up early as you get older, or whatever, just sitting outside watching the world go by. Just strange to see. One thing that I noticed after I come back from Tunisia, there were a few things. That one was that terrorist attack, and the number of tourists really went into decline. It really hit the Tunisian economy, and I remember feeling after I come back from Tunisia how I felt for the people, like, you know, who were going to be hit because of one terrorist attack. People weren't going. I don't know if you recall, but there was like a boat came up behind the hotel, and when the gunmen, like these jihadis or whatever, went in shooting people, and then the whole tourist industry collapsed. But also in 2011, they had an uprising, and it was the first uprising of the Arab Spring, which was when there was loads of little revolutions and uprisings across North Africa and the Middle East against oppressive governments and tyrants. And in some of those places, the situation improved. I reckon Tunisia, it improved a little bit. Although it's still a very poor country, and there's lots of upheaval and socio-economic problems as well there still today. And again, it's one of the better African countries, but in a lot of those other countries like Libya, the situation deteriorated significantly into civil war, the rise of ISIS or ISIL or Islamic State or whatever they're called this week. You know, lots of problems, and sometimes when people stand up for themselves, the impacts can often be worse. But I really felt for the Tunisian people when I heard about the decline in tourism, and also when I heard about the Arab Spring and how it wasn't necessarily going to lead to an open democracy where people can express themselves and people can better themselves, which is a real pity, because I remember, I don't know if it was Noam Chomsky reading a book of his a while back, saying that, you know, maybe a lot of the developing world will never truly develop because of the inequalities in the world internationally, etc. And I have a lot of respect for the Tunisians I met and the Tunisian people. But if ever you get a chance to go, go. And again, hotel complexes or whatever, get off the beaten track and see what it's really like there. One of the things I noticed was the guide who took us to the Sahara. He loved it. He was talking all day on his mic about everything. I asked him a question about, like, what's the social system like in Tunisia, and he gave a 2-hour response. But we were on the coach all day for hours, like going to different places. But he had a real love of Tunisian history and Tunisian culture, and a real passion for it. And I think he realised he had quite a good job, really, for a Tunisian. But if you ever get a chance to go, go. And this has been my first Travelogue podcast. If you've liked it, please let me know. I might do some more of them about different places I've been to around the world. So enjoy the rest of your day, and you don't have to go abroad to travel. You can travel just by reading a book, watching TV about travel programs, going around the UK, even finding places in your own city. But travel, it just gets you to appreciate things and gets you to think differently. Cheers, thanks.